or whatever is kind of like one of the things I do. So markets matter a lot to me, obviously, as well. But you know, at the same time, like, you know, the private markets are kind of something I like a little bit better, and the public markets I use just to learn more private opportunities. So investing and trading is still important. A lot of opportunities can come from it, but you know, the markets have been just sort of straight line up over the last 10 years, and they finally are starting to look kind of skittish now. So I'm kind of excited again about investing in this market. But I've always liked short stock, as you guys know, and you know, like to sign events in biotech. Like I think Sava, for instance, I'm going to do some work into it, but it's probably a worthless company. I think there's somebody in WSB that likes it. But if you know my history, I'm very good at finding like really good biotech shorts and then buying puts. And obviously stuff like KBio, which I think some of you guys know. I took over KBio. It went up from $1 to like 40, and then I got arrested and went back down. Like I'm probably going to do something like that again at some point. Again, assuming I'm allowed to and things like that. But anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I have another quick question. So, a lot of people are familiar with, a lot of your old streams and a lot of the stuff you used to do with kind of the community and just people that, were around back then. Do you have any interest in doing sort of that same stuff again where you're on, doing live streams, talking to people, doing, things, venues like this?
Yeah, man, of course. You know, I'm like 2 days out of jail and I'm doing this now, so I'm definitely going to keep doing stuff like that. And if you if you know or were around for the GameStop stuff, like I was actually excuse me, I was actually trying to post from jail, this really strict jail I was at on WSB, and it actually got me in a little bit of trouble. Like I got my email taken away for 6 months, so that was pretty brutal. So I couldn't like participate in Reddit. And then there's always like haters and snitches that'll like tell the prison like, oh, Martin's on Reddit, like he must be on a cell phone or something, and then I get in trouble even if I have like if I made posts on Reddit. So I couldn't do it over the last 4 years, and it was like a big regret, not being able to do it. But now that I'm back, I'm happy to like weigh in on any stock. And have a good one, bro. See you.
The good news is you are not the biggest criminal in this Discord, so I think you're safe.
Sweet. But no, I'm happy to weigh in on like any stock or whatever, and like anybody else, it's just my opinion. I'm wrong all the time. Like, I think I called GameStop kind of right, but it's all like reading tea leaves too. Like that was a really tricky situation, and it's still a tricky situation. I don't know if everybody's a GameStop fan in here, but I still think it's kind of a pretty dangerous investment.
What do you think of the market conditions right now? What's your opinion of everything going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, my first day on Wall Street was around my birthday, late March in 2000. So I was kind of like born in a bad tape, and we're in a tape like that right now. So anybody who was like trading in 2008 and 2009 or 2000 late 2007 knows the feeling of a bear market and how ugly and crazy it gets, and often irrational. And in the good times, you often feel like for me in 2007, I lost a lot of money shorting, and I felt that was really irrational. So like lately in the last couple of years, I felt a lot of the rise in the market was irrational. And so like this comeuppance isn't like catastrophic to me. It's just a natural like reversion. It's hard to time these things, of course, Now, is the bear market over? Is it going to come back? I don't know, and I don't think most people know, right? It's a very dynamic thing that is constantly changing. It all depends on inflation numbers, and it depends on hundreds of conditions that you can't, forecast easily. So the market might go down another 20 or 30%. It could go back up 20%. It all depends on what unfolds in the near term. And we just don't know some of those things. So you have to sort of stay vigilant and keep your same kind of like flexibility. So I think that anyone who thought that like stocks would go up forever or crypto would go up forever and there was no risk and this would never have a decline is just a rookie that doesn't understand the markets, and this is a good learning experience for a origin story in trading is, like, I was lucky enough to be, like, I opened my E-Trade account, I mean, under my father's name, because I wasn't even old enough to have one. And I was working at Jim Cramer's hedge fund, and I started doing what they were doing and what I was doing my research and work on, which was shorting all these like crappy internet companies. And the quality of those companies was really, really low. It was like a bunch of joke companies. Like my first short ever was this company called CMGI, which was an internet incubator of basically a portfolio of internet companies that were really low quality. And the stock would end up going to zero, and we shorted it and made a lot of money. And I did the same thing in my PA, so Wall Street speak for personal account, which you're not supposed to do. But I did it anyway, and it was a really fascinating learning experience. So I like kind of got, it's kind of like a baseball player who can switch hit. Like you have to be able to short as easily as you can go long. And I know there's a lot of like retards in here who, no offense to anyone specifically, I just mean the WSB like Reddit community, who are like, oh, shorting is bad or whatever. And like, that's cool, like whatever you feel, But for me, shorting is really important because I think data is really hard to predict. Like if you can predict the ups and downs of the market, or you think the market goes up over the long term, no matter what, I think those are two really crazy ideas, and I wish you the best of luck. It doesn't work for me. I hope it works for you, but for me, I can't predict the day-to-day of the market, the beta at least, and I certainly can't predict, if the stock market's going to go up over the long run, continue to go up over the long run. We just don't know. And so for me, I like to short as much as I go long, and that way I can sleep at night and not worry about, oh, the market's crashing. Like, okay, my shorts are going to be really profitable, my longs are going to be really unprofitable, but they'll even out if I'm well hedged. And that's the whole point of a hedge fund. And it's funny because you see big funds like Tiger and even Melvin, right? Like Melvin's different because they had just bad alpha, but Tiger is all beta. Like Tiger's down 50%. And as you guys, if you really know anything about me, I worked at a Tiger, so-called Tiger Cub. I worked at a really big hedge fund after Kramer's hedge fund that got me like my credibility in Wall Street. And Gabe Plotkin did as well. He worked for a Tiger Cub called North Sound, and I worked for a Tiger Cub called Intrepid. So he was the consumer guy at North Sound, and I was the healthcare guy at Intrepid. And I was really close with the healthcare guy at North Sound. In fact, I almost worked there. And so I know Gabe through that. And, he obviously went to Steve Cohen's firm and became a superstar. And then he started Melvin and did really well there. And then obviously he blew up partially because of WallStreet Bets, which is hilarious and amazing. And I'm kind of proud of the WSB community, but for doing that. But at the same time, the point is that like having long, shorts, and cash is kind of the only safe way to make money in the market. But if you need to make 20x or 50x your money because you don't have much money, obviously my advice, you can't really follow my advice, because my advice is a way to make like 10 or 20% a year, which doesn't really work if you've got $5,000. You need to YOLO and try to get to $1 million a different way. Anyone else?
I also just want to make one disclaimer that we are the real WSB. There's another server, they're larger, but this one, we're a little bit more serious, a little less of the Reddit crowd.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that.
Thank you. Being recently out of prison, do you now have the N-word pass?
It's a really good question. I'm so glad you asked. I I was at Fort Dix, and I was with a group in a room of 8 guys, right? And I think 6 were black, maybe 5. And I was telling this joke, and I used the N-word, and it was not looked kindly upon. Some guys laughed, and one guy was like, just don't say that again. We love you, but don't say that again. I was like, okay, I get it.
How well?
I've avoided the N-word.
I know you got hit pretty hard with fines and whatnot. How well did you make out with everything said and done? You still pretty well off, or are you?
Yeah, it's sort of, it's a great question, and it's very personal, obviously, but I'm happy to answer it. I sort of have the same wealth I have before, except for one detail, which is there's one fine I got from the FTC case, which is $64.5 million. So that would effectively like get me back to where I started. Like I'd basically be starting from scratch. I mean, might have something left over, but that'd be pretty brutal if I had to pay that. So everything else I'm sort of fine with. I basically more or less neutral from all this experience other than that one thing. So I've filed my appeal for that thing, and I could tell you, if you're interested, why it's such a crazy case, and I'm never going to have to pay $64.5 million. I won't pay a penny of that. But never say never, right? And if that sticks, and my other lawsuit that I'm filing to make sure that I don't have to pay this, my company would have to pay it. All of those like don't stick, and I somehow lose every appeal and every other lawsuit and every case possible. I have like 5 lines of defense. It is possible, basically, I'd be broke, but it's not there yet, and I doubt it's going to be the case. But again, stay tuned, I guess.
Community's rooting for you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I don't know if this was asked before, but how do you feel about Elon taking over Twitter if he does? And is there a future Martin Shkreli Twitter influencer, perhaps?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter right now. It's at Enrique something. It shouldn't be some numbers. It's like at Enrique 3 and a series numbers. I bet a bunch of you guys know what it is already. But let's keep that like on the DL. I don't want Twitter to find out. I've got like 7,000 followers. I just started it. Like a bunch of crypto community has followed me, so it won't be hard to find what it is. If Elon successfully buys unbanned almost instantly, I know. I'll just say I have a lot of confidence in that from the source himself. But it's his acquisition looks more and more unlikely. You can see the merger arb market. The merger arb market's very smart. Like so when you trade merger arb, and I'd recommend some of you guys get in it because it's a cool little side hustle in Wall Street. But basically, you try to estimate like what the purchase price and what the likelihood of an acquisition closing is. And here, the market basically doesn't believe at all that this deal is going to happen, at least at the original price. And deals rarely get restruck. That's fairly rare. So basically, the chances he buys Twitter are like 5 or 10% at best. Well, maybe just 5 or 10%, I'd say. Maybe 20 or 30 if you're like really sanguine. So unfortunately, I think that Twitter is going to stay independent, and that means my account will still be banned. But I still think they've changed their protocol where they don't perma-ban guys who come back. There's other people that have been perma-banned. They make kind of new accounts, and those accounts kind of stick. So hopefully mine will stick and not get banned tomorrow, but you never know. I mean, I've always been on the internet. I've just never been famous. So like since the internet started, I've been posting in message boards and doing all kinds of stuff. And then when the Daraprim thing happened, it kind of became much more noticeable. But I'm not going to like change kind of the way I do things. So I'll still go on like Instagram, and I don't know if I want to be an influencer, exactly. But whatever you want to call it, I'm definitely going to continue to be ever present online.
Martin, we have a question from the community. The WuTang album, that unreleased WuTang album.
Yeah.
There's probably information you can't share, but is it good?
I would say so. One thing that's funny is like the whole sale process for this thing was really weird. I was tagged with an $8 million. I guess first I'll answer your question since you asked it. I would say no. Probably not. Now, if you're a big WuTang fan, perhaps you'd like it. I think it's too long. It's a double album. So I think there's a lot of filler in it that kind of sucks. And like if they compressed it down to one album, it'd probably be all right. I think Wu-Tang's kind of time has sort of come and gone anyway. And like that sound of the 90s rap sound kind of like, quite frankly, sort of sucks. Like if anybody likes like old school rap and you listen to it now and you play it compared to like Drake or Future, or Lil Wayne, or any of the modern rap that's out there, like it's really primitive beats and really primitive sounding shit. So it's not like in rock, like some of the old rock music still sounds cool because it's not like there's no way to innovate on guitar very much. But in rap, like it's just like 80s rap and 90s rap sounds ridiculous. If you listen to it, it's like hilarious almost how bad it is, at least the music side of it. The lyrics are obviously a different story. But in WuTang has always been kind of a lyrical group. But in any event, I was down to $2 million left on my my forfeiture. I had a forfeiture of $8 million, and I paid 6 of it in cash, and I had to pay the last 2. And basically, I said, well, I have this album. I don't really want to like pull a dividend from my drug company or sell shares in my drug company or anything like that. I had some other stocks. So I basically said maybe it's time, because it was right when the NFT thing was booming. So I didn't think the WuTang album was worth anything. I bought it for 1.5 million, and I was basically like, I'd be lucky to get 500 grand for this. So I started, but then the NFT thing came along, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like I can make it an NFT and sell it, and maybe it'll go for like a couple million or more. And so I reached out to a couple of friends in the crypto community, and one crypto whale offered to buy it for me, and just hold it for me until I got out, which was really nice, like kind of like a loan. And one thing led to another, and like Pleaser DAO all of a sudden bid 4 million for it, and I basically was like, whatever, like just take it, because they basically paid the rest of my restitution, which was 2.3 million. So I could have kept the album if I wanted, and just used another asset, but I was kind of happy to get rid of it and happy to sell it. I have this other like tax refund asset that I'm waiting on, which is I could have like monetized that, and done all kinds of things to keep it, but the fact that the money was on the table and I could get out, and like you had no idea if the NFTs would still be around, and when I tried to sell it privately before, I couldn't get bids anywhere even near $1 million. So like it wasn't a great investment. So the fact that I got out with my shirt still intact and actually made like 800 grand, like that worked for me. So I just kind of, I'm happy to be rid of it. But with the NFT implosion that's happened, I mean, who knows if Pleaser DAO will even exist at some point, and like maybe I'll buy it back for 100 grand or something at some point.
Speaking of NFTs, a couple people were asking your opinion on, the whole crypto and NFT blow up and that whole market and how it's all gotten pretty crazy. What's your opinion on that?
It's very reminiscent of what I was talking about in 2000, where you had the internet coming out, and it was this fantastic new technology. And this sounds so like weird to people who are very young, but in 1998 and 1999, there were still people saying, why would we need this thing? Why is it such a big deal? Kind of like people say about crypto now, like, why does this matter? This is ridiculous. And literally people would say, like, who in the world would be shopping on Amazon? Like, why would you ever buy clothes on Amazon or like stuff that you can't see? And now we all know how kind of that story turned out. At the same time, there were hundreds of internet companies that had the worst business models, like Webvan, eToys. There's a company called Bunyan.com, literally for foot like bunions. So all these bad companies like raced to get capitalized. They got capitalized, including software companies like Ariba, and other kind of like weird edge cases of the internet. Optical networking, like JDSU, a lot of people point to as one of the bubble stocks. And so you had all these like companies get capitalized and then blow up, but you still had companies like PayPal and Google, and a little later, obviously, and Facebook in the 2004 kind of time frame that got born from this internet boom. So I think the same thing's going to happen with crypto, where your average internet stock from the 2000 era went bankrupt, and so I think the average crypto / NFT is going to be worth nothing, right, in the future. But at the same token, there will be the Facebooks, there will be the PayPals that emerge from that rubble and that carnage, and that survive, and not only survive but thrive, and they'll be the future leaders of the world. The question is which, right? At the time, PayPal had like 10 competitors, and only PayPal sort of survived from the 2000 to 2002 era, and they barely survived, right? They sold out to eBay and propelled eBay to success. And eBay had a ton of competitors, and all these companies, were sort of fighting for their lives in the 2000 to sort of 2005 timeframe. And they came out alive and well-financed and successful. And, we're going to see the same thing with crypto, where a lot of these things don't survive and blow up, and not just for technical reasons like Luna, but just out of apathy and out of, lower and lower prices. Like, once an NFT drops 98%, it's not going to come back. It's kind of over. And that's the same thing with most cryptos. Like, there's so much capital overhang, I think is the term economists use. once you've lost so much money in a stock, it just is like demoralizing for the stockholders, and they end up selling. And in crypto, you basically don't have an actual asset, right, with an actual asset value. So unlike a stock that can come back, crypto is only sustained by the amount of people in the network. So it's a really tough asset class that is not going to do really well in general. But I really bullish on like utility coins like FileCoin and Arweave and stuff like that, where you can actually perform some utility that's useful to the client and you're solving some actual problem. Because so much of crypto is, I mean, at the end of the day, to me, this is just software. It's like the fourth wave of software, from mainframe to client server to software as a service, and now to this sort of distributed ledger technology that's enabling new applications. But so much of crypto utility doesn't need to be, so much of what people are using crypto for today, you don't really need crypto for. So like Bitcoin, for instance, to me, is something that will eventually go the way of the dinosaur, because if someone from Mars was observing what we do with Bitcoin, that we just use all this energy to calculate these financial functions, these mathematical functions, and then just do it again and again, it's sort of silly. Like it's sort of a pointless currency. Something like Ethereum makes a lot more sense to me, or FileCoin, or Arweave, or Golem, or any of these other tools that you can actually build a whole full stack on, to create something neat. Whereas Bitcoin or Litecoin or Dogecoin or something, I know that Dogecoin is kind of transforming a little bit, but any of those coins that are just a store of value coins, I think won't do very well. Anyone else?
Yeah. Thank you for visiting us. It's an honor. Welcome.
Appreciate it.
We are, we're basically just a bunch of LARPs and degenerates that like to hang out and talk about stocks and finance, crypto, what have you. You're a legend in as far as pharmaceuticals go. I think that's even an understatement, honestly.
That's nice of you.
Well, dude, I mean, seriously, like
not true though.
Well,
Yeah, I agree with them.
I think the most obvious thing is, can we get your perspective on this whole COVID thing that just happened, and how that affected pharmaceuticals and how it's gonna affect pharmaceuticals going forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I just before we get to that though, I mean, I appreciate all the nice things. I don't see myself as better or worse than anybody in the community. Like I said, I was on WallStreet Bets when I had a few thousand people, and um, I like to have fun like everybody else. Like I take finance seriously because it's my whole life, and like I hope a lot of you guys do too, because it's a path to wealth. Like when I was in 2000 when I started, I put $2,000 in my E-Trade account, and I slowly worked it up to 500 grand, and lost it all on a YOLO bet in 2003 on the merger of Biogen and IDEC. And it was like a crazy experience for me. Like E-Trade actually at the time had a really bad system, so it recalculated my asset value or whatever, my account value, at like negative 5 million or something. And I was like, I called them up, and remember, this is like the worst day of my life in the first place because I just lost everything. But I didn't want to owe them $5 million either. So I knew I was wiped out, but I didn't think, like, I was just doing options, so I didn't think I could possibly owe them money. So I called them up and I'm like, I don't owe you guys any money, right? And they're like, no, this is just our margin system screwing up. So just a quick funny story, but point is, like, I YOLO'd myself and I had no money at some point myself, and like it's very like I understand what you guys do, and what a lot of guys talk about and have fun with, but at the same time, like I've also been through the like upper crust of hedge funds, working with all the top investors of the world, and I've been to the mountaintop in a sense. I've been the CEO of publicly traded companies. I took companies public. I had a hedge fund myself. Like I've done it all. So I have some experience and perspective that's not just like beating my chest and screaming YOLO and all that stuff. And again, I'm not saying I look down on it. I'm just saying, like, if you succeed in finance and you start to build a portfolio, one of my friends, he's like a protege or whatever, he started with nothing, like trading sneakers online. And now he's got I don't know how much wealth he has, but it's insane. Like 8 figures, 9 figures, something really large that, is impressive. And he did it all himself, and he's not even 30 yet. And the point is, like, that could be you, Sorry.
Martin, what kind of tips do you have for the community Like, just through your endeavors, you have quite the history. What kind
Sorry.
what kind of tips you got for us?
No, I'm happy to share those too. I just had to take a pause because this place there's a speaker system, so like when they call somebody, I want to make sure that they're not calling me. I feel like I'm in a hospital, like paging inmate Shkreli. So I want to finish the thought on COVID real quick, and then I'll talk to you about tips. But I just wanted to intersperse that kind of commentary and say, like, again, I might sound like really dry and almost academic, but I take what I do really seriously, and I think eventually you should all too. But if you have $15,000 and 7,000 in Tesla or something in Tesla calls, I'm not like looking down on you at all. I understand your position. If you have $25 million and you have 24 million in Tesla calls, I think you're more. But that's all up to you. But that's sort of just like, again, I don't want to sound like I'm better than somebody, or I take life too seriously, or I take finance too seriously. I think it all is like relative to where you're at in life and stuff like that. So COVID is obviously kind of like pharma was waiting for this to happen, and we had a lot of false starts with H1N1, swine flu, all kinds of shit like that over the years. And so the big one, if you will, finally hit. And I don't think we're going to see more big ones. I mean, I don't think monkeypox is going to be a big one. I don't think like we're going to see outbreaks every year or two that have happened in pharma. It's a really dry sort of question in some ways because there are I mean the biggest change I think is the nucleic acid technology, meaning QnA. The fact that this thing worked and it worked so well was really impossible to predict and amazing. I mean, very very few people thought you could encapsulate nucleic acids, which are basically DNA or RNA, and they're quite flimsy. They break apart quite easily through enzymatic reactions or through just these very very weak bonds that hold them together. And so they're also very polar. So polar drugs don't get into cells. So you encapsulate them in fat, which is nonpolar, and they get into cells. And nobody thought that would work because it hadn't worked for like 30 or 40 years. And then Moderna and BioNTech, it just magically worked. And they kind of saved the world in some ways. So
does that mean we should see a fad towards that technology now that it's shown such success?
Yeah, it's a bit of a fad, but it's also, I wouldn't call it a fad.
I know it's kind of an unfair word because it's
if you look at
proven,
CRISPR,
right?
yeah, like, and it's one of these like aha moments where you're like, oh my god, like this could work for anything. Like you could use this for fucking any disease you can imagine. And there's more details to it than that, because like right now, all these fatty, like they call them LNPs, lipo nanoparticles, they all just go to the liver. So if you have a liver, but if you want it to go to the brain, it's not going to do that. So there's still a lot of engineering to be done here, but the companies that figure out how to engineer CRISPR to work will do really well. A couple I like are like Antilia, NTLA. That one's amazing. Like that's probably a 10 bagger at least. But again, with the market crapping out, like you have to be able to buy a stock like NTLA and maybe short like a similar stock, like I think CRISPR, I've been short CRSP as a pair trade because Antilia is really cheap, and they're going to basically cure this one oddball disease called hereditary amyloidosis, TTR amyloidosis. Whereas CRISPR, the only thing CRISPR has going for it is it's got the name CRISPR Therapeutics, which sounds like they own CRISPR, but they obviously don't. And it's just got a cool, like people think it's like this great company because literally it's CRISPR is a revolution and their name is CRISPR Technologies. But if you actually look into it, it's kind of retarded. If you look into the portfolio, it's really not that special. And they don't have a lot of great things going on. They sold their best drug, or their most advanced drug, I wouldn't call it best, to Vertex anyway. So they keep a little piece of the Vertex drug and they don't have anything else. So if that thing works, Vertex is going to succeed, not CRISPR. So I don't know. I think CRISPR is kind of bullshit. The company, CRISPR, the technology is great. And I think Antilia, NTLA, probably has the best lead on that. And I also think like there will be some mRNA company that sneaks up and, I wouldn't say challenges Moderna, but like, because like mRNA is for everyone. They don't have a lock on the market. Anybody, like you and I, can make an mRNA drug tomorrow. And they kind of using this thing for vaccines, which vaccines have always been the redheaded stepchild of the pharma industry, because they're just a weird cottage. I mean, they're not so small I can call them a cottage industry, but they've kind of been an afterthought And obviously after COVID, that's changed a lot, and people are now respecting vaccines so much more. And I think the problem is, like, if you respect vaccines too much, you forget that, like, at the end of the day, vaccines are not that big of a business, and they'll never will be. Like, COVID was a one-time thing. RSV is something people are really excited about. RSV is not going to, like, transform the pharmaceutical industry. It's just one disease. It'll be a good revenue line for GSK or Pfizer, but it's not going to be like the end of, it's not going to stop the presses for all drug companies. So, like, we're going to have to get back to treating Alzheimer's and treating some of the other big unmet needs to do really well. And we'll have to see kind of what, if there's any role for mRNA in there. So in terms of tips, I mean, I think, there's hundreds of them, and I'll probably write a book or something, or just share whatever I think. I think it's also important to not just talk about tips, but in programming, there's something called an anti-pattern. So you have design patterns that people accept, and then you have anti-patterns, and anti-patterns are the things not to do. And so I can share both. I have plenty of experience, unfortunately, in both. I've done a lot of things really, really well, and I've done a lot of things really, really poorly. And I can, whether you like me or don't like me, you can get lessons from both sides of them. So I think if I look back, like, the number one tip I sort of have is just to, I have to think, like, it's so personalized and individualized. Like, I think so many people, ask for advice, but, there's no one thing that fits everyone. So for me, probably the biggest change for myself was to learn perseverance, because, oftentimes your biggest enemy is you. And there's a really good book about trading. It's probably the best book about trading ever written. It's called Trading to Win. It's by Ari Kiev. And Ari Kiev was this guy who passed away. He was a psychologist. And you would ask, like, what does psychology have to do with trading? But they're really the one and the same in some ways. And Steve Cohen, who's probably the greatest, or most successful, at least, trader of all time, Steve Cohen hired Ari Kiev to basically be the staff psychologist for his hedge fund, SAC Capital, which is now called Point 72. And this book is about the program that Ari Kiev gave to a lot of these traders at SAC Capital. And SAC Capital at one point made over 100% a year for about a decade, which is really remarkable. Not many people know that. Doubling your money every year for almost 10 years. I mean, that's remarkable. No one's ever done that.
Wasn't
So
SEC Capital also on the federal watch list for almost a decade for insider trading and insider
yes,
information?
absolutely. Steve Cohen is a remarkable guy. He never went to jail. About 7 or 8 of his guys did. I think one of the problems is when you run the most competitive hedge fund like SAC Capital, it's sort of like having the Yankees or the Astros. Like, you're so desperate to win that your employees, whether you know it or not, are going to start breaking the rules. Like, I think the Astros, right? They had basically like the World Series stripped from them. I'm not a baseball fan, but it really gave me a chuckle when I saw that, because they were stealing signs, or I don't know exactly what they were doing, but everyone thought the Astros were like this. They did really well because they had that Moneyball kind of strategy. They used a lot of computational data, and I bet that's mostly what they did. And obviously they're very talented baseball players, but there was a big controversy over, like, whether what they did was real or not. And you also see the same thing from Bill Belichick. Trading is a lot like sports. Like, you need every edge you can get, and if you're, obviously if you have insider information, makes trading very easy. But even if you're willing to take the risk of getting insider information, which I strongly suggest you never take that risk. It's just not worth it. Even then, it's not easy to, like, constantly procure insider information. It's quite difficult. And it's very easy to get caught. So, Steve Cohen knows that. And, I think he also sort of knew that his guys were, what they were doing, he kept some plausible deniability. And I think he learned his lesson the hard way. He had to pay $2 billion. He almost went to jail, but he's still one of the best ever. And I think that, reading that book, Trading to Win, talks about mastering your own psychology ahead of you. For me, it was manifested in the form of perseverance. I had a drug company that I started called Retrophin, and it wasn't doing very well. I was the CEO, and I was kind of banging my head against the wall. We were doing a big deal with Valiant, and it fell through. And the perseverance was really tough because we had like $12,000 left in our bank account, and it was really a struggle. Like, we were running out of money. We were privately held. And, by holding my head up high and still trying to the last minute. We finally got some financing, and then we went public. One thing led to another, and now it's called Travere Therapeutics, and it's worth like $2 billion, or 1.5 billion, or 1 billion, or something. And that's my baby. Like, I made that company, and it's amazing, how much like your own psychology controls the situation, because 99 out of 100 people would have just quit, I think. And I just like found a way to like push all the negative shit out of my mind, focus on, okay, what can I do today to make this work, and ignore all the like noise in my head going off about like, what it's going to be like to lay people off, what it's going to be like to tell the investors I failed, all this stuff. And when you're trading, I think a lot of it has to do with that, where, you want to make your P&L positive every day and as much as possible, but you also have to contest with reality where, you're not going to be on your A game every day. You're not going to be able to make money every day. How do you handle it when you lose? YOLOing and doubling and tripling down on a position is not the answer, right? And I think books like Trading to Win, the other one that I'd recommend is Market Wizards by Jack Schwager. There's a whole series of these books, actually. All of the stuff by Schwager I'd recommend. There's a recent one called Unknown Market Wizards, and he actually profiles guys like WallStreet Bet guys, where like they're totally unknown people that like are homes, and they've made like 10, 20, 50, $100 million just out of the blue. And he figures out how they did it, or interviews them at least, and asks about it. And they're people who were like never ran hedge funds or never worked on Wall Street. And I think that's inspirational to a lot of people here, because they're just like regular guys. But I think so much of trading is like you either have it or you don't, to some extent. Like, you can teach someone how to be a better trader, but from my experience, like, some people are either really good traders or they're not, and most people are not. It's like baseball or any other like chess. Like, I always wanted to be a great chess player. It would be really cool to be a grandmaster chess player, but like, I kind of suck at chess. And like, no matter what I try to do, I just can't like get better. Like, I've had great coaches, I've tried, but like, I can't crack a really high chess rating. It's just not something I'm ever going to be that good at. And it's okay to not be good at trading. Like, personally, I'm actually not that good at trading. I found out my real calling was private equity. And once I just started doing private equity and making money in private equity, I did it because I got that trading background. I got to learn the pharma industry. So I was able to sort of take my knowledge base of pharma and apply it in a field where I could like make slower trading decisions. And after I did that, I started to learn why my trading wasn't that great. And I ended up becoming a much better trader and much better investor as I kind of was able to slow down and just trade for my own account. And I've made over $50 million trading in the last, I don't know, since I got since I went to prison, I guess. That year and the year before that, I probably made around 50 in just trading income. And I never had made anything close to that before. In fact, before that, I probably was a net money loser trading. And really what happened for me was just gaining an understanding of like, without having clients and without having to like show that you made money every day, you can really pick and choose what trades to make. Like, you don't have to trade every single day. Like, you can literally make one trade a year. If that trade doubles your money, like, you can sit in cash and just wait, and you could still be like watching the market with 10 computer screens and doing research all night, all day and all night, and not make a trade and still feel good about it. So much time when we look at the market and we're reading news and we're on Twitter and we're on, the Reddit, and we're just constantly like looking for shit, we feel this temptation and compulsion to trade. But the reality is, like, if you could erase all that shit and just double your money every year, of course you would do it. And sometimes you can find that one trade that's really going to work and just kind of be a sniper instead of like just throwing a bunch of shit at the wall, which is what I used to do.
Hey, Martin.
Hey, Martin. It's nice to know that you're out.
Well, I have to.
So how was it in Allenwood, right? I was there for like about 6 months, and then I got moved. But I was in Lewisburg first. I was in the camp, and then I got caught with a cell phone. Got moved up.
That's what everyone does.
Yeah, shit. Did you spend any time in the hole, or?
Oh yeah, I've been in the hole 3 times for a month each.
For a month. Oh, for investigation, like in the AdSeg.
Yeah, you're a real jail veteran. These are all jail terms nobody knows.
I just spent 3 years. If you want to Google me,
I told you weren't the biggest criminal.
Yeah. But yeah, I was like, after Edward Snowden, my company got investigated. I got sentenced to 3 years. Just Google twin hackers, you kind of get my story. But
Cool.
so during the prison time, I mean, like they had cell phones in the block, right? Because Unicore works like recycling electronics. I think there was this one Unicore that Lewisburg and Allenwood shared, and then there's another Unicore that I think Allenwood was making furniture or something. I don't know if they
Yep.
shut down the one that was like electronics because there was a lot of cell phones coming out of there.
Yeah, it was very dry when I was there. I had bought one for 5,000 recently, and
Like
somebody
5,000?
offered me one. Yeah, cell
Okay.
phones are expensive in prison.
But behind the
Um,
bars. But if you were in like camp, it's about 100 or two.
yeah, it's cheap in
Most
camp.
people most people leaving would give you one. You never got lower. You never lowered your points to get to a camp or anything. Or
No, I was explaining that earlier. I've never been able to go to a camp, even though I had very few points. The BOP always just considered me too
too high
dangerous
risk.
for a camp. But I was at MDC the first day I got there. I got like a cell phone for $2,000, and then at Fort Dix they were like 900 at the time.
Yeah, Fort
And
Dix
then
was easy.
yeah, and then 2 weeks before I came home here, somebody offered me a cell phone for $14,000. I was like,
What?
"Is it made of gold?" It's-
Information.
But so in the movie, like in the middle of the night, did they have those like screenings with somebody plugging the USB in and watching movies
Yeah,
late
yeah.
at night?
Dude,
Yeah.
it was so ghetto too. Like we would have like freestyle rap battles and we'd watch freestyles on the like after we downloaded them on these USBs. There's so many jail stories I have that are so crazy, but I don't want to bore everyone. If that's not
Actually,
what
I think
anybody
you should give us a freestyle. I think you owe it to the public.
I agree. I just am not the problem I have is I don't have any talent. So but I have a bunch of like goons now from jail like I can bring to like WallStreet Bets or the chat. Like I have like all these homies now that
Hell
I've
yeah.
gotten into.
Yes,
Way too
definitely,
long ago.
definitely, 100%.
I have a question for you. You mentioned a book. Are there any other entrepreneurial endeavors that you might undertake now that you're a free man?
Well, I wouldn't call a book an entrepreneurial endeavor as much. I mean, it is obviously, but that's just sort of something on the side. Basically, like if I do a book and it sells like I don't know 3 to 5 million, I'll basically feel like I didn't lose any money throughout this whole jail thing. So that's kind of what I want to write it. I just have kind of a vendetta. Like I really feel like I shouldn't be penalized for all this. So I feel like if I write a book, it'll be like getting even. But
Right. No, I
the
think they're making a Netflix documentary about my story,
oh,
but
dude,
not a docu-series. It's just one episode. But I mean,
yeah,
are they gonna?
these
I'm
people.
sure they did a lot for you. Like there was a guy that was following your. He bought your old apartment and shit.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
Really, right?
no, these people are vultures. Like, there's a movie that's going to come out about me by Christy Smythe, and the dude who's playing it is like a really big actor. I won't mention his name, but he's like a household name, and he was in one of the Marvel movies as a lead actor. So it'll be really interesting if and when that comes out. But outside of that, I mean, absolutely, I'm gonna create some great company and or do something business related. I have a lot of
think you should
ideas.
make a company that helps inmates. Like, do you know that they use that Corlin
No,
system and stuff?
yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, but regardless,
Wouldn't it be a good like nonprofit to just like set up and
maybe
then
a nonprofit, but
we're helping inmates rehabilitate into reality or
yeah,
something?
listen, you just have to figure out what battles you want to fight. Like right now, I want to take advantage of the sea change going on in software. I mean, maybe I'm just being greedy and being self-centered, but like, people in prison, at the end of the day, I feel bad for a lot of them. Some of them deserve to be there. Some of them have to pay their due to society, pay their societal dues. Some of this is the government's job, not mine, So like some of it, like, do you really think you can tell the BOP what systems they can implement? Like, it seems unlikely. At the end of the day, like it just is what it is, and like you have to worry about yourself. And for me, business is really different from non-for-profit, and I don't like to mix the two. So I'm focused on software. I'm focused on if I get my ban reversed, certainly pharmaceuticals, but mostly I feel like software is going to be probably my future.
We just want to say real quick too, Martin, that we we'll always provide a venue here if you ever want to, you know, show up and talk. We can do
Awesome.
this stage venue whenever too. I think it's nice so that everyone, you know, can't yell over each other and things like that. So I know the other server gets a little
Yeah, it's a
crazy,
lot.
but this one's a lot more serious.
And you could change your username to something a little bit more cryptic, so everyone doesn't know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's a lot of fun, and like I said, I mean, the best thing is, you know, I just got out of jail, so it's a little crazy right now. But in the future, if we're just talking about any given stock, like AMC or whatever, like, I
Soon
really
do you
would
get
love
on a
to.
house arrest?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to like just jump in and like we're all like 10 or 20 people talking about AMC. That's a lot of fun to me. You know, I'm happy to answer questions. You know, but
Martin.
What's your opinion on the recent market downturn? Have you been aware
I
of it?
talked about it earlier.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Martin, what's your opinion on the New World Order and all the Jews controlling society and the clot shot and the jab giving it?
Dude.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Hey,
Crazy.
Martin.
Conversations like that.
I just got a message from somebody at the WallStreet Bets Reddit saying that I gotta pass on a link to you to the actual WSB server. I don't know if you're interested in that, but I was told
Okay.
Get dunked on. How about that?
I thought I was in it.
There's two. There's one that's WSB, and the other one's just WallStreet Bets.
This is like
Yeah,
the
no,
original
I'm in
Wall
both.
Street Bets. The other one is more of it kind of blew up from.
This is the only one that matters.
Honestly,
this is the
Martin,
only one that
this is
matters.
like this is the best one. I'm just being
Yeah,
real with you.
don't even
Yeah.
go over there, Martin. Don't
Yeah,
give them any
yeah.
clout.
Okay.
But there is one more thing that I did want to ask you. We are such a vested community here. Our leader, Gert, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He created a token or a cryptocurrency. We're
Yeah.
thinking at like 10K followers, if we get you there, that you tweet Gertcoin and
Wow.
and try to give it a little
Well,
publicity. It's a
I
strong
had
token.
well, I had some questions about that because you know, I heard about it and I'm always intrigued about any crypto project, first of all. But I wanted to know if it was an ERC20, but someone told me it was a Binance Smart Chain.
Yeah,
And
it's
I wanted to know if it had a fixed supply.
We'll get you looped in with the developers because we're not really
cool.
we're more investors than the technical folk, but we'll get you talking to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean like
Have you
as you guys know, go ahead.
Have you made any trades since you've been out? Anything you're seeing right now?
I have to be careful. I'm in a lot of litigation, but I would say over the last few days, not specifically. So, you know, things have been pretty crazy for me. But as soon as I get back to the saddle, I have a lot of smart investors, a couple I mentioned that do a lot of trading for me. You know, some guys I've worked with in the past, and you know, they're really much better at trading than I am. It's kind of a funny dichotomy. Like you have to know what you're really good at. Like for me, investing in the long run and like finding like one or two really solid ideas. Like I like the stock RVMD, Revolution Biomedicines, but I like it over the, you know, like a 10-year time frame, right? And basically I go to my traders and say, listen, I think RVMD is going to be, you know, one of their drugs is going to be a huge drug. And over the long run, they'll sell several $1 billion of that drug or whatever. And they try to figure out like, okay, well, what's the best timing? How do we approach this? Do we buy a little bit of it and just wait? Or do we try to figure out when the market's going to realize that and try to anticipate it? And so like, they're really, really good at that. I'm much better than them though at studying the companies and understanding them. And the reason I ever studied that company was because they're making a drug for a protein called KRAS, which is mutated in a huge amount of cancer, all the cancers basically. And so if you can make a KRAS inhibitor, you could like dominate the cancer market and a medicine. So everyone's interested in KRAS. And I think, so I actually wanted to buy this KRAS drug from a university. Again, private equity, it's what I do. You can't trade that. You have to like go meet the university people, sign a contract, etc. And I almost did that from Alan Wood. That's a whole other story. But as I was researching this, I realized that like RVMD is probably the best game, the best way to invest in this. And, you know, it's already a multi-billion-dollar company. So it's not like it's cheap. Like, whereas buying the drug from the university would only cost $1 million and I would have 100% of the drug. The market cap of RVMD is like a couple billion. So it's really, the ship has kind of sailed. But at the same time, RVMD could go up to be a $20-50 billion company someday. So it's a good long, but again, do you buy it today? Do you buy it tomorrow? Like those are really tough questions to sort of figure out. So for me, trading is not necessarily always my thing. Like I could take a look at something like GameStop though and say, okay, wait, I really don't think this makes sense. Like $200 or $100. Like now as a trader, I would say, I think I said at the time, like I think it can go up. I even think it could go to 1,000, and it went to like 400. So it wasn't that far off, but I was like, it would go there just for a minute though, and then come all the way back down. So I said, why not 1,000? It went up to 400 and it's never seen it again. It probably won't ever see it again. But, I know enough about, just investing in general that I could look at a company like that and more or less figure out that it's not a good risk reward in the long run. Now, a great trader doesn't even worry about the risk and reward in the long run, right? A great trader figures out, what am I doing today and tomorrow? I'm not a great trader. I think I'm a great investor, but we'll see that's determined over many, many years. But trading like day to day is really not something I'm good at, unless it's like a biotech that has a news event coming up and I'm like doing some option strategy or something. That's something I do. But in terms of like figuring out like, oh, is this stock cheap and is the market going to bounce? Like I kind of suck at that. Like you guys are probably better at that than I am.
So Martin, you mentioned you were going to start a software company. Any ideas for what its product is going to be or service? Or
Yeah, so I had a software company before I came to Prism, and it was focused on financial information and stuff like that. I think that the landscape's changed a lot in the last 4 years, but thankfully I have a really good relationship with all my programmers who are like really amazing dudes, not just great programmers, but great people. A whole bunch of them actually came from Twitter. They were like disenfranchised from like the whole like basically craziness of like you can't be a Republican and work at Twitter basically. But anyway, I still have that kind of team in place, and I'm really excited about sort of taking advantage of different technologies like AI. I think if you look at some of the things that have happened in AI, there's really like amazing platforms that you can use to make new, brand new things in search, or maybe even for something as pedestrian as dating. I have a lot of funny ideas for different programming projects. I have to sort of get my bearings straight for a few months and just sort of see where the world is and where the white space is. And there's a lot of competition in software, but I think financial stuff is certainly something I can do, like high frequency trading of crypto, or like crypto algorithmic trading, like quantitative trading is something I could probably do easily and compete in. But there's other people doing that, obviously. Making a new token, or investing in a token or whatever, is certainly possible. But again, to me, tokenomics is kind of ridiculous. Like ultimately, software is software.
yeah,
Whether it's go ahead.
yeah, no. So I have a criminal record, and it's tough finding jobs since I got out. Like I've
Of
been
course.
applying several places. So I'm just like I'm ready for a new project myself, and just taking on anything that comes my way. Startups were willing to hire, but then getting back in the groove of a startup is kind of beyond me at this point. I want to do something more stable, and yeah, I'm definitely down for any
It's
type of
hard.
project.
Are you a programmer?
Yeah, no, I'm a hacker, bro. I got sent to Google
Yeah.
Twin hackers. So yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm
So
also a
obviously,
coder as well. Yeah.
yeah. So people skilled in computer science, tend to be able to land on their feet even after a criminal record. I mean, we were hiring programmers before I went to jail for people who knew a library called React, which Facebook is behind. It's sort of a UI library that abstracts the DOM and on the web. So it was a brand new way to kind of do UX for just any web app. And the amount of people that really understood React at the time was pretty limited, and we hired a bunch of them, and we actually hired a dude from Facebook. So we had a really good squad of dudes. And like, if you asked me at the time, like, would we have fired a felon? Like, uh, honestly, like if you knew React really well, sure, because like when you like find these really small niches of like, people who really understand one specific thing really well, as long as the guy wasn't an asshole and like collaborated well with people, it would have worked well. And obviously, knowing a lot about quote unquote information security or hacking, in another word, it's something that's a really important skill. And one of my friends from Fort Dix is a convicted felon who also was a famous information security guy. And now he's working in crypto, and he's doing kind of
Yeah, I got a lot of crypto projects, but I just didn't want to be
yeah,
affiliated because most of the teams they disband over like a couple of months over petty issues.
exactly.
I did not want to be part
Yeah,
of
it's hard. Yeah, no, shoot me a message. But I think I understand where you're coming from. And again, it's sort of a tip for everyone in general. Is like when you really dominate one thing. Like for me, I was working for Jim Cramer, who his pride was to not dominate anything. He like knew a little bit about everything. And if you know his TV show, that's basically kind of what he was as a hedge fund manager. He was a really, really skilled trader. So even though he's like a terrible investor, like he really doesn't even understand business at all. Like he's, and I think he'd admit that privately, but he's like a super trader. Like, and trading and like knowing a lot about thing and stuff like that are two totally different things. Like if Jim had a hedge fund, I would give him all my money. Like he's super sharp at not losing money, like really defends his like portfolio like a hawk. Like he's a really good trader, but again, doesn't mean he's smart, and it doesn't mean he's a good investor. He's a very smart person, but not smart on investing. So the point I'm making is like I decided to specialize in biotech to like stick out and actually instead of like knowing a little bit about everything, which is pretty useless when you need to prove yourself. Jim didn't need to prove himself. He was already a hedge fund manager. So he could just sort of do what he wanted. Whereas for me, I'm like, okay, this skinny 17-year-old kid from Brooklyn who, doesn't have a pot to piss in. My parents are janitors. They barely speak English. I'm like from almost a broken home, like, and I'm taking the subway from Brooklyn to Manhattan to work with all these rich people. Like I need to stick out. I need to do something. And I basically become a master in biotechnology by just studying it really well. So at least I sounded smart when we talked about biotech. Of course, I didn't know much about the markets, so I couldn't really stock pick and stuff like that. But we made a couple of successful trades, and the rest was history. And when you like really fixate on one thing, even if it's really, really, really specific, like again, your stuff because you're an adult, you've been to jail, you've seen it all, professionally and personally. But for the younger guys, like, and for anybody, if you master like one programming language or one library or one like specific corner of crypto, like GameFi, or maybe even that's not specific enough. Like you have to be really, really specific. Like, and you're the go-to person for one field. People will pay attention to you. People will really like, and you share your insights on Twitter or whatever. There was one kid we hired named Patrick who was just tweeting about biotech stocks, and there was like a bidding war between me and a top biotech hedge fund to hire this guy. And I ended up hiring him. His name's Patrick Kutcher. He's done really, really well. He already built and sold one of his own drug companies, and now he's the CEO of another one. And basically, he was just a guy who dropped out of a PhD program and just started tweeting about biotech, and we took notice of him. So if you have something to say and it's smart, like and Reddit's one place to do it, right? Like there are millionaires, plenty of millionaires in WallStreet Bets, maybe even a couple billionaires. So if you have something really, really cogent and like legitimate to say instead of YOLO and stuff like that, like you might just get a DM from somebody like, yo, I really like what you're saying on restaurant stocks, or I really like what you have to offer on this very weird specific niche. Like, the more specific, the better is my point. And I think that's like something anybody, whether they're 15 and they have $5,000 or 15 and $0,000, or they're 50 and they're looking for a new thing. Like, I think that kind of can apply to anybody.
What do you think about a decentralized hedge fund?
I think it's an interesting idea. I've thought about it.
Are
we
you
should
talking about dicks?
Superfly. Your mic's hot.
If you want to DM me, we could have some thoughts about that privately, but publicly, I think it's a really interesting idea. I think that the whole point of a hedge fund is you kind of like bet on a gunslinger, like one dude usually who like you believe in and is a good trader. Like I said, and like I mentioned, the most common one was just Steve Cohen, but there's plenty of others, Gabe Plotkin. And you just are like, yeah, he's my guy. I'm going to put my money in and see how he does. And you can scrutinize their track record, you can scrutinize their personality. So a decentralized hedge fund's a little different, right? You kind of are doing the opposite in a way. But I do think like WallStreet Bets in many ways is a decentralized hedge fund. You have people who post their trades and post their thesis, and then people follow them or don't follow them as they see fit. And I think doing that in with a protocol where you can actually kind of see people's pitches and see people's trades, I think it could work. Like, so for instance, you decide that you really like Citigroup stock, okay? And you write up a page about why you like Citi, and you submit it to this sort of DAO that, and I'm just spitballing here, you'd be coming up with this on the spot, but let's say you put that out for the DAO and you say, okay, I like Citigroup because rates are rising and banks do well in a rate rising environment, blah, blah, blah. And, everybody votes with their money, right? So if somebody says, all right, well, I like that idea, I'm putting in 10 Bitcoin, well, whatever, that's 400 grand. And you basically raise money for the trade gets done, and you get 1% and 20% of the fees like a hedge fund does, right? So you sort of get paid based on your trades. And obviously if the trade works, let's say $2 million of money goes into your trade and the trade doubles, you go to 4 million. So you get 1% of the 2 million, that's $20,000. And then you get 20% of the 4 million, or the 2 million of profits, I should say, which is $400,000, which is great. $420,000 for, a good stock pick. Now the next trade you put up, people are probably going to fund it for 50 million. And you get this community effect that, people are like, oh, wow, this guy has an amazing track record. His last 8 trades all worked out. You could probably raise $1 billion for a single stock idea. Now, the other guy that puts like a 2-sentence, like, yeah, I like AMC because I'm an ape, that guy might raise $50 and get 3 shares. And no matter what happens to that stock, he's not going to get a whole lot his next time around. So I think that's a really good idea. Maybe we should do it. But like I said, with this new kind of revolution in software, there's a lot of places that you could sort of play and a lot of things you can create. And the sky's really the limit. Like maybe this GERT thing is the next big thing, right? You just never know. I mean,
what do you think?
Hi,
Have
Martin
you looked into
Shkreli,
CBDCs
notorious
at all?
QnA, longtime fan, first time speaker to you. Will
Central bank digital currencies, or is that not really your alley?
Yeah, not so much my alley. I mean, I think that it behooves governments to get involved in this stuff, but I also think like crypto is the enemy of the government, right? And I think that we're on a crash course for some. At some point, the U.S. government's going to turn pretty hard.
I'm just going to say my theory is that maybe Elon decentralizes Twitter, steps up as the world new order like kind of guy to speak out for tech. How some way he can hold his reputation throughout all this bullshit that's being put on right now, but. He then goes ahead and is, here comes CBDC walking through the door, and he's like, listen, you can either put $50 of your money into Dogecoin, or you can take the $500 payout from the government, but there's going to be consequences.
I don't know if that is going to be how it plays out, but I think that basically, the gist of it that you said is correct in the sense that like USD coin right now is a decentralized US dollar. If it gets regulated a little bit by the government, which I bet it will, then it in essence has become a CBDC, right? I mean, it's not a central bank issued currency, but it's central bank regulated. So at the end of the day, is there really a difference? It's sort of like a bank, like our banking system, right, is regulated so heavily and it's guaranteed by implicitly kind of by the government. So like I could see like Circle and Tether more or less being those CBDCs. Like, why create a new one? We have these, they work, they're fine, so, and a little regulation actually wouldn't hurt. Like, so you could actually believe and trust that these things are actually what they say they are. So I'm not sure it's such a bad thing if the government takes a peek at Tether or USD coin. I think on the other side though, Bitcoin or Ether is a really violent kind of challenge to the status quo. I mean, if I'm the president or Janet Yellen, like, I could understand, like, this is scary. Like, this could make the dollar go away someday. And they don't believe it because they think it's a joke, but they've taken notice, obviously. And at some point, if it continues to grow, they're not just going to take notice, they're going to take action. I mean, they're praying that crypto goes to zero because it's such a threat because they can't tax it. They can't regulated, they can't do all this stuff. So I think inevitably we're going to have some kind of falling out and crash course with the government. And I think that the people hopefully will win over the regulators and the bureaucrats, but we'll sort of see what happens there. I mean, again, this is a longer term arc of the next 20 or 30 years. I hope that we can actually trade using crypto instead of using brokers and the SEC. I think that's the next big thing. And I think FTX is letting you do that. But why should there not be an Apple coin or a Tesla coin, and you could just buy and sell that on the blockchain 24/7, as opposed to like investing through the New York Stock Exchange and through Interactive Brokers or Goldman Sachs or Robinhood, and they have to know what your social security number is and all this shit. Like, no, I just want to buy some Apple. Like, why can't I just do that right away?
What do you think about ARK and
Martin, yeah, so I have a question regarding KRAS and RVMD. So it's like, I understand like KRAS, it causes like further downstream unregulated gene expression. Why target KRAS versus just actually edit the genes? Because I feel like a lot of pharmaceutical research is at a stage where it's going to be moot in about the next 10 to 20 years, as the next, I think 10 to 20x bagger is going to be in gene therapy, where you essentially eradicate the specific genotype in a particular disease versus trying to treat the actual phenotype from the genetic.
Yeah, it's a great question. So before I answer it, I just want to mention that somebody asked a question about ARK. So I'm going to answer this question, then I'm going to answer the ARK question. So obviously what you're saying is right, with the proviso that you can actually target every cell, right? So like I said, the gene therapies of the world are not tumor tropic. They don't navigate to tumor cells specifically, unfortunately. I've been in gene therapy, and in, like I was just talking about earlier with lipid nanoparticles, you cannot direct the trafficking of these technologies to specific cells. With things like AAV9 and AAV, different AAV serotypes, you can sort of direct them generally, but for like tumors, like lung cancer or something like that, it's really hard to get these gene therapies to specifically take in every cell. So the amount of expression you get is actually pretty low. So if you only get that gene to express its payload in 10% of the tumor cells, well, all you've done is
a resistant population.
Oh yeah, you've probably made the tumor much stronger. And, you need so the reason to target KRAS, secondly, is that it works, right? I mean, we have Soteris approved, and the Mirati drug is about to be approved, adagrasib. So I think that you can pair those. Obviously, the drug companies are doing that. They're pairing them with other inhibitors, and then ultimately, I think maybe what you're getting at, and that could be an even better idea, is a PROTAC. Because if you can dock onto the protein site and you can ubiquitinate
the ligand area of a receptor.
Yeah, and ubiquitinate it with PROTAC, then you've solved the problem. And I think PROTACs are like, I've written on my blog on martinshkreli.com, like PROTACs are like the best invention because you get the benefit of the small molecule that can get in any cell, right? And then you also get the benefit of being able to degrade a protein, which may get it to, you get the sort of pharmacokinetics of a long-term kind of downregulation. So I'm with you conceptually. I just think what's the race, like you said, in the next 10, 20 years? Can you engineer CRISPR or nucleic acids even? As you may know, Ionis and AstraZeneca had a KRAS antisense, oligonucleotide. And it failed because for exactly what we're talking about, which is they couldn't get it to get into cells in enough of a, just sort of enough efficiency to knock down the gene. So you have the same problem with gene therapy. And if you can target this stuff to have wide expression, like you said, it absolutely will work. But is the question like, can you do it faster with the RVMD way, which is just like old school drug development, like make a fucking inhibitor, and that still works. Like Tagrizo from AstraZeneca still sells $4 billion, so
but it has like side effects which range from like it targets healthy organ sites, and you have a variety of KRAS on the market. Because my thinking was like you have viral and virion particles that can be used as a payload, and I think with basically the rise of Moderna in the past 2 years with the COVID vaccine, I think you're going to see like maybe perhaps further exploration of using viral particles as a delivery payload to the nucleus in a healthy cell to actually deliver it, like maybe nucleic acids. And also think like the remarks regarding cancer treatment, perhaps you're encroaching on a market space that's going to be shrinking as, if you look at the population demographics of our country, you have a disproportionate number of older people. The next 10 to 20 years, they'll pass away, and who's going to inherit the mantle? It's going to be the younger generation who will already have like a healthier lifestyle from the research that's been done. So it's like perhaps, life prolonging therapy drugs are the next wave, perhaps, versus actually treating the end organ or end of life ailments that will eventually be not as prevalent, in terms of like target demographic, in terms of revenue that's able to be acquired from a patient population.
No, that's a really good point too, because you have liquid biopsy, where you can tell somebody has, a couple of circulating tumor cells with, errant KRAS expression or EGFR expression from blood, which is amazing. Like the companies like Guardant Health and the other liquid biopsy companies, like this is the most amazing technology ever. It's only $1,000, and if you come up as liquid biopsy positive for cancer, they can do a CT scan or an X-ray and figure out like, oh my God, you have 4 pancreatic cancer tumors, and we can cut them out before they get, too big, before, it's untreatable. So liquid biopsy is going to reduce cancer. I think the demographic thing you're saying is absolutely true, but at the same time, that's going to be a bit of a longer term trend, and I'm not convinced that it's going to be that impactful. Cancer's not going away tomorrow, and you have the whole world to think about too. So cancer's still big, and I think that the point is like well taken, that there are other ways to treat KRAS tumors, including TCRs and other cell therapy. Certainly all the...
Oh, you cut out there.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to listen to the loudspeaker in case they're trying to arrest me.
Understandable.
So we'll see what happens. I kind of like this traditional RVMD way because they're just about to they just got into the clinic. They seem to really have a handle on it. And do you want to bet on these, kind of pie in the sky technologies that may or may not come out for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Or do you want to bet on guys that have the drug today and they're going to cure people today? Like it's a hard call. Like to me, we'll see, you have to keep an eye on both. And I think, I'm not saying RVMD is like a 20 bagger today, like
right.
all in, it's just kind of a stock I like and can think about. Let me talk about ARK for a second. I appreciate all the detailed biotech things, and we have the rest of our lives to talk about biotech. But ARK is funny. Like this happened before, and I think history is really instructive. And even if you're 20 years old and you're just into investing now, like you can still read the history of the markets. There's a really good book called The Money Game. It's by John Steele Gordon, and it's about the history of Wall Street. And it's fascinating because like people don't know, like you couldn't probably tell me who the richest man, the top 5 richest guys in the world were in, and no offense to any woman here, the top 5 richest people in the world were in 1920, because nobody knows who they were. Nobody knows who they were in 1950 or 1980, but we really focused on who they are today. You could tell me who the like probably top 10 are today, but it's sort of a funny thing because history is a way to look at mistakes and lessons that probably will happen again. And so if you look at ARK, like there are people like Kathy that have been around before, and like it tends to end in failure because there was a guy named Gerald Tsai in the 50s who ran a fund called like the Manhattan Fund. He was a Fidelity portfolio manager, and then he ran this fund, and it basically just bought all the growth stocks. And that's from what I can see, that's what she does too. And like, it's not hard to pick like, okay, what are the most innovative, crazy growth companies? Like Beyond Meat, Tesla, it's like pretty simple to like figure out. Like there's one quantum computing company called IonQ, which is really crazy. If she's not long that yet, she will be soon. I love quantum computing as a concept, but I'm not sure I like it as a stock. Anyway, you can make a list of like the craziest off the wall companies and start buying them, but that doesn't mean like those are going to be the best stocks. And the flip side is true too. When I was a kid, when I say kid, I mean as a kid investing, I thought I could buy all the low PE stocks and make money. And I was like 14 years old and I didn't know anything about anything. And then I realized like just because a stock has a low PE doesn't make it cheap. It's just means they have a lot of problems. And conversely, if you buy all the high PE stocks or the no PE stocks, guys that don't even have earnings, that doesn't mean that's going to work either. You have to really take a holistic kind of viewpoint. And I think she's just sort of happens to be like a growth lover. And over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of great growth stocks, right? And you could basically be a monkey throwing darts at a dartboard and make a lot of money. Now the real test is like who the real investors are and who are the pretenders. And unfortunately, I think she's a pretender. Does it mean that like over the long run, her mutual funds might do okay? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't think like, I think mutual funds in general are kind of like a shitty product because they're long only, they're fully invested, they don't short. As I mentioned, they're long only. And like clearly like you can't keep cash. So if the market's frothy, you can't like sell and have half your money in cash, which one of my favorite investors, Seth Klarman, wrote a book called, Seth Klarman runs a hedge fund called Baupost, and he wrote a book called The Margin of Safety. And it's out of print and he like doesn't want anyone to read it. But if you Google Seth Klarman Margin of Safety PDF, you can get it. And I really encourage everyone to read it because Klarman has one of the best long-term track records in investing, and he always has a lot of cash in his fund. He has a hedge fund. And Warren Buffett's sort of similar. And in a mutual fund, you almost have to be 95% invested. And we all know what it's like to have a margin, which is like you're over 100% invested. I was once like 1,000% over invested, which, banks won't generally let you do. So having all this margin is like almost always a recipe for failure. And having cash is kind of like, something that I think that everyone should do because, again, sniping like really high probability successful trades is much better than like swashbuckling a trade that you're in. And I think ours is basically a mutual fund that, like as every other mutual fund, 99% of the money is invested. She has no room if a stock goes down to buy more because the clients might redeem their money and she can't average down on her favorite stocks. She basically has to sell her favorite stocks as her redemptions come and as her stocks go down. So to me, the mutual fund game in general is a losing game. If she was really good, she'd have a hedge fund anyway because mutual funds charge 1% or whatever, or 2% off the top every year. Hedge funds do that plus 20% of the profits. So mutual funds are like, to me, the minor leagues and hedge funds are the major leagues. So, the thing about mutual funds though is you can raise a lot of money, whereas in hedge funds you can't. So in hedge funds, $1 billion or $5 billion is a lot of money. Whereas in mutual funds, like that's not a lot of money at all. Like you can raise $100 billion. So 1% of 100 billion is pretty good. But at the same time, in hedge funds, 1% and 20% of 5 billion is about equal to probably 100 billion in mutual fund money. But again, it doesn't mean that the mutual fund people are totally talentless losers that are idiots. But in general, they're probably not as good as the hedge fund guys. So to me, I'm sort of bearish on Kathy.
Martin, I have a quick question about when you had your drug and you raised the price. Did you offer it for $1 for those people that didn't have insurance? I remember reading something about that.
Yeah, this is a complicated topic. A lot of people don't believe it or whatever. Well, there's a couple of things to understand. I mean, the first thing to understand is I would never, ever, ever want somebody to not be able to take my medicine. I don't care what it costs. I don't care any of that. I was already very rich when I bought Daraprim. I didn't need to make more money by excluding people from taking medicine. The second thing is in pharma, you want as many people taking your medicine as possible. It's not a good business to make medicine so expensive people can't afford it. And I think one of the things that people didn't understand about that was that $750 a pill is actually not a lot for a drug. And it was too cheap before at 18, and basically at $750, it was kind of just more normal enough compared to its peers. So right now there are drugs for cystic fibrosis that are $300,000 a year, or for HAE that are $600,000 a year. And so Daraprim was about $50,000, which it was only a one-time therapy. So Soliris from Alexion, now AstraZeneca, was $400,000 or so a year, but you had to take it every single year. So you would end up paying $4 million or $8 million for that medicine. No, obviously, no individual person would ever pay $4 or $8 million, right? Their insurance company pays for it. And if you can't afford that, if you're on Medicare, Medicare would pay for it. If you're on Medicaid, Medicaid pays for it. And if you can't do either of those, there's usually the free drug program that every company sort of has, and we had too. So we had a $1 free drug program. It's not free, but it's basically free. If you enrolled in it and you proved that you couldn't get insurance or whatever, we got you drugs really quickly. One guy called me from Alabama And he said he had a problem because he just couldn't make Medicaid because he worked, but he made just above the poverty level of $26,000. He didn't have insurance, but he wasn't indigent, so he couldn't enroll in Medicaid. And so we waived. He called my cell phone, and I was like, all right, I'll look into this. I'll do the best I can. When I called him back, he said, your company already has given me the medicine. It didn't cost me anything. But my problem now is that the ambulance ride that I took to the hospital for this disease cost me $2,000. And I don't know if I can afford that because I make $23,000 a year or $26,000 a year. He's from Alabama. He was a construction guy. And I was like, oh man, that's crazy. So I was happy that we paid for it before I could even call him back. But I was upset to hear like there's so many fucked up things in the healthcare system. Like the ambulances, like if you've ever been in one and you got a bill for one, you know what I'm talking about because it happened to me once with an asthma attack. It's like I had a 2-block drive from my apartment to the hospital and it was, like over $1,000. And the point is like there are a lot of inaccuracies in healthcare and a lot of like it's a huge system that has all kinds of crazy kind of components to it. And to me, like you can blame me or you can blame somebody else, but obviously like I didn't sell the most expensive drug. I didn't even sell a very expensive drug. Daraprim is $45,000 one time, not every year. You don't get toxoplasmosis more than once. And, it's very, very rare as well. Like it's only a few thousand people a year, 2 or 3,000 ever get toxoplasmosis. So to me, it was more of a media thing. And especially the fact that I wasn't, I wasn't willing to back down. I wasn't like gonna give in to all the bullshit of like Hillary Clinton or politicians or whatever that wanted to use me to get votes or whatever they needed. So I think a lot of it was just that. And, I don't really care what people think of it because I have conviction that I did the right thing. Again, I would never want somebody to not get medicine. I've donated many millions of dollars to charities, including through my own charity, for people that couldn't afford different things due to their circumstances. So like one drug and like trying to make a couple extra $1 million is it's very complicated. And I'm not saying that every single thing I've done in life is holy and I'm some kind of saint because I'm not. But I made a lot of mistakes. I've done stupid things. I think a lot of us could say the same. And just try to do better and learn from the fuck ups and not repeat them.
Martin, what advice would you give to if I could, what advice would you give to your younger self and other people in here to not, potentially fly too close to the sun and get in trouble with law enforcement or the feds or just stuff like that in general?
Yeah, really quickly, because I know it can be a kind of a little over I can talk too much. I think the first thing I would give to my younger self is slow down. You have a lot of time. I was always like 15 or 16 and wanted to be like done with high school, done with college, like skipping grades, like, getting money as fast as possible. And like the best advice for everyone is just slow down. Life is really long and the mistakes you make they can cost you over the long run, as opposed to the little short-term gains you make won't really make a difference. Like, slow down and stop to smell the roses. Like there's nothing happening today that's such an emergency that you can't figure it out tomorrow. Like the market will always be there. What's important is you and you gaining your skills for the long run. Race, it's not a race really, and if you try to race, you're going to end up like losing sight of the big things. In terms of law enforcement, I think it's really important to stay humble. No matter how much money you make or any successful given trade, I think this applies to trading too. Like whenever I made some really good trades in my hedge fund, usually I would give back most of the profits in the next few days. So I'd like make some great trade and we'd be up like 5% for that week. And then the next week we'd lose 5% because my head got too big. And I'd be like, oh, I'm such a good trader. It doesn't matter what I trade. I'm going to make another 5%. And, I'd promptly lose all the hard-earned gains of last week. And so, humility cuts, that sort of applies to life in general. Like I had been doing really well with my drug companies. I sold out or got kicked out. It's really had a lot of drama with my first drug company, but I made like 50 million bucks through that. And then by trading and starting my second drug company, I was probably up to, it's kind of hard to tell when you have a private company, but several $100 million of net worth. And I was like, my shit didn't stink. You know, I was like, whatever I can do, whatever I'm doing, like, is going to work. I'm amazing. And then all of a sudden, you know, Daraprim came around, and again, I kind of didn't think through. I mean, we thought about it pretty heavily, but I still didn't expect there to be such a backlash. And then when there was a backlash, I really should have, at least for profits, putting profits first instead of, you know, other things, which I'll, you know, whether or not what I did was the smart thing is up to you and your perspective. But at least from a profit perspective, it wasn't the smartest thing. You know, not backing down was positive from other perspectives. But, you know, any corporate executive and PR person would tell you the best thing to do there was to apologize, back down. I'm so sorry, you know, I didn't realize raising the price would be this stupid. We're going to change everything and fix everything, and I'm going to resign, and everything's going to be great. That would have made me the most money. But
Martin,
you know,
I have a question for you.
Well, no, man. I've been waiting patiently, bro. It was true.
Let me ask him a quick question.
No,
What
bro.
kind of
Let me ask
music?
him.
What kind of music do you not fuck
Hey,
with?
Superfly,
Like the
yo.
least?
Go ahead, Ari.
Okay, Martin. What kind of music do you really dislike, like passionately?
I am not a music like expert, and this is WallStreet Bets, so I would like to talk just about finance and business and stuff. But I don't say I really dislike anything. I mean, I don't see myself ever liking country music, for instance.
Okay,
but
me too. Perfect.
I like most other music.
Good. Okay, can we get Trell's question in, please, Ari?
All right. Hey, yo, Shkreli. So I've been studying a lot of harmonics, Elliott wave theory, and I feel like I've been getting way better at predicting price action for the market. And I've been having a little run-in with a few gang members in my city, and I need to know
Okay.
how can I defend myself, and where can I go about finding security like you did with Ghost Killer?
Okay. I don't know if you're joking or not, but I think you're joking.
Okay, let's hope he was joking.
Hey Martin, I have a question. My name is Faceless. My real name is Abraham. I'm the senior vice president at Energy Blockchain. I was wondering, I guess, like, what's the limitations of your like, you know, the red tapes? Like, you know, like obviously you're a criminal right now, but like, what is the limitations? Like, what can you do in business? Like, can you be an advisor? Can you be a consultant? Because we would love to have you in the company.
Well, you can just DM me. Obviously, I get a lot of, you know, just DM me and we can talk about it.
All right, awesome. Thank you, man.
All right, guys, I should probably wrap it up and go handle some other stuff. But it was really great talking to everybody, and I'll be around, and you could just DM me or whatever. See you on the Reddit thing. And thanks a lot, guys.
Absolutely. We all appreciate it. Thank you, Martin.
Welcome back.
All right, first of all, now that he's gone, I want to say thank you for everyone who asked really good questions. And to those of you who tried to disrupt what's going on here, shame on you. And if you do anything like that again, or if you try to disrupt AMAs and shit we have in here, we will ban your ass so fast. Don't be lame. Be cool. Everybody wants to talk to Martin. I get it. But there's no reason to, you know, blow up the chat or come on stage and, you know, act an idiot. So anyway, I appreciate everyone for being here. I'm going to exit the stage now. Thank you. And we'll definitely do this and other events like this again. Just check the top of the channel for all of our live events. Thank you.